Well, here we are again, and I want to welcome you to our 45th film in our series Pattern of the Month. I actually think I said 45 last time too, but this is number 45. And I told you I was going to tie something completely different, and I told you I was going to tie what's known to be the most classic fly of them all, the best known salmon fly in the world. And as I did this book myself, it's a long time ago, I think it was published 1990, I was going to use it. It's like a reference book from the classic flies. And we're gonna tie the Jock Scott. We're gonna do it a bit different, but I was going to start this by reading a little bit about this classic fly from the book, and it says here that the man behind the fly, Jock Scott, better known as Jock, was born at Branksholm, Roxburghshire in February 1817. And he began his sporting career at the early age of 13, going into the service of the Marquis of Lothian under the headkeeper Robert Cush, whose able hands he first learned how to tie a fly. Here, however, he only remained 2 years, at the end of which time that prize of border sportsman lady Lord Jock Scott happened to see him, taking a fancy to look at him, asked his name, on his saying Jock Scott. And this was the guy that tied the first black and yellow fly, most well known of all classic flies, the Jock Scott. Put the book back there, and actually those of you who are collectors, I think we still have a few other limited editions if there's someone that fancy one. Okay, Jock Scotts. I did like this. I was going to show you a few Jock Scotts, and here is a little Farlow's piece of paper with some original Farlow's flies, and at the top there's mostly Nicholson's, but there's a Jock Scott. We open this cabinet and we find also really old flies, and in every collection there are at least one Jock Scott, and most of them, the collector's items, are big singles like this. But it's also quite interesting that even among the gut-eyed old flies, put up another little box here. This is a box with smaller gut-eyed doubles and singles. And see what we have here. There are in every collection a Jock Scott. Here I found one. Do I have another one here? And yeah, we have one right here too. And since it's the best known fly of all times, there are Jock Scotts in every size and in many different variations. And what we're going to tie today is of course completely different. I think that the flies we tie for fishing today is much better fishing flies than the old classics. Oh, I have another one here, actually one that I framed for a collector, and I don't know if he didn't pay or whatever happened, but it's not with me. Anyway, take this away. And what was I saying? Yeah, that the Jock Scott, I think it got its popularity because it was a very complex fly. It was harder to tie than most other classic flies, and it was a tweed fly, and I think we're gonna have a little film from the tweed, opening this little tying section here. And when I try to transform classics into fishing flies, I try to avoid to do things that make them fish not as good as they could. I try to optimize their fishing capabilities. And we're gonna tie something like this today. This is how the fly looks. And I think it's a beauty. And it's like this, that there are people that said that if you haven't caught a salmon on a Jock Scott, you're not a proper salmon angler. So let's do one and see if we can do one that is good enough to catch a fish. Today I'm going to tie with our FITS medium and extra small, like I do most of the time. I'm going to use yellow both, and the reason I use the yellow one on the body is because the tag on the Jock Scott was yellow silk. I don't like silk that much actually on my fishing flies, because it's a dead material when it gets wet. And I will instead use the little piece of fluorescent here for the rear part of the fly. So I do this, and you've seen me do this before. I cut the medium to make the medium hold this extra small when I put the thread on. It's a simple way of keeping the very flexible FITS tubing to be as flexible. And I move back the thread a bit, and I start with Mirage. When you tie a fly like this, you can do it, of course you can take away a lot of the classic parts on the fly. I'm not going to take away that much today. I'm just going to transform it into modern materials and things that I don't think affect the fly negative. And I start by putting this Mirage on over the yellow, and as you saw, I don't go back with the thread behind where I want the Mirage to be seen, because if I do, when the Mirage gets wet, the thread is seen through the Mirage. Okay, tails, and I'm gonna do a tail with a little bit of Kratz fur first, and the tail on the classic Jock Scott is golden pheasant topping and then an Indian crow, and I'm doing this the way that I take a little bit of Kratz fur yellow first, spread it a little bit before I tie it in, back down so I cover where the Mirage is tied in. And instead of cutting this like this, I cut this angle, because if I cut it like this, I need to have a sharp scissor. When I go with my thread over, it's going to taper in and you don't get a big edge. Then I'm going to do something instead of the Indian crow. You can use a little bit of red maybe, but let's add a little bit of extra fluorescent here. So I take a little bit of reddish orange Kratz fur. It's going to be few strands. Just make sure this looks good. Before I tie it in, put it about on top, about half the length of the yellow, and tie it in. Does the fish care about this? I don't think so. Do we care? Well, you want to fish at Jock Scott, might as well do it as good looking as possible. And instead of the ostrich here, we are doing a little bit of dubbing, and a lot of the old flights had Berlin wool dubbed on. I use my SSS dubbing and I put on a little bit. I will build it up fairly short and a little higher maybe than what I should have been doing with regular dubbing like that. Put that on, move the thread to the front. Then I'm going to tie in what's going to be the rear part of the body. I'll bring one of my wallets here. It's a good way of keeping the stuff like this. And I'm going to have, instead of the black silk and the yellow silk, I'm going to use our braids. We start with the yellow hollow braid to the back. Here we go, a little tangled here. Try to take the wrong part. And I'm gonna have this as a body, and I'm gonna have a hollow silver one as a ribbing. And I tie in my ribbings first, a little bit underneath. Then I take the body half and tie that in underneath. And the reason I tie in underneath is I use it all the time, and it's just because underneath is less seen than what's on top. Then I start by putting this rear half of the body on like this. And I'll go a little bit further than I should. Okay, and then since I'm not going to have any body hackle over this rear part, I'll put on the ribbing, and I do 3 turns of ribbing over this rear part like this. And then one of the really special things about the Jock Scott is the little toucan feathers that are covering the rear part of the body like this. And I will do that again with crafts fur. It's a nice material that is easy to taper and easy to tie in like this. Of course I can use a little yellow feather too, but I take a little bit. I don't want it to taper too much. And I tie it in so it's a little bit covering the rear half of the body and go a little bit over the butt section there like that. And again I'll cut this away. And you can start underneath or start on the top, it doesn't really matter. I think it's easier to see that you get the right length if you start underneath. Or start on the top, sorry. And now I start, put the one, yes, the same length, tie it in under, few turns. Make sure it's even and cut it off, and try to cut the way I told you before. Then I'll take the dubbing again and I put a little bit of a black butt section onto the middle too. It's like building a classic Jock Scott body but with modern materials. like that. Move the thread to the front, and then we go on with ribbing. Should be silver again. And instead of the black floss silk, I'm going to use the hollow black SSS braid. It's also a lot stronger than the silk materials. Tie it in. Okay, and then I go to the front here, saving about 4 or 5 millimeters. Wrong one. Take the ribbing away and put the body on. And of course you can discuss if it's worthwhile putting this much work into a body on a fly when it's the wing that catches the fish, but that's what I think. But it's still nice to do it. Do it good. It will also add to the beauty. Okay, body hackle. I'm going to put a black one on, and I'm going to do it maybe a little bit bigger than I would have done with the classic fly, a little longer fibers. And that is to get a little more motion to the fly. Looking so I get the length I want. Strip the feather and tie it in underneath again. And here it makes sense to tie it in underneath because I will have so much material stuffed on top, so it's better to make room for that. And then I always start with 1 turn before I go back, and then I do 3 turns of hackle over the black part. Take the braid, spin it down, and I spin it down rather hard before I start putting it on. And the reason for that is that I have 2 body sections, and the body sections each have 3 turns, so it's 6 instead of what's normally is 5, or for me on a fishing fly maybe just 4. Okay, and instead of taking this and just cutting it off, I move my thread a little to the front, and I back this, double it back and tie it in. This way the ribbing can't slip, and cut it off. Few strands like that, looking pretty good. Okay, so now I'm gonna start with the wing, and I'm gonna have also 2 feathers to be doing the front hackles here, but I will tie the main part of the wing first. And I will start with a little bit of yellow, magma yellow, call it, SSS Angular HD. Going to say hollow-bread here, I'm getting tired. Here we go. And I spread them between my fingers and I tie it in. And I bet Jock Scott, when doing this, he would think, what is he doing now? But we have found out that a bit of flash to mix with the natural materials is creating a very fishable wing. I do that, and I take the yellow, and I'm gonna put on a yellow wing, going to be not too big and not too long. It's one of the biggest mistakes we do in modern tying, is to make the first wing too long. Then you lose out on the tapering and you get a fly that won't swim as good. So I take a little yellow and I put it in, and I look so it's about the same as my tail. Tie it in wide like that and cut off. Normally I talk a lot when I do this. I'm going to talk even more today because it's more materials to be tied in. Here we go. Good. And then I'll do a little bit of blue angel hair. I'll switch over from HD to regular angel hair. And the reason for that is that angel hair is thinner and move better with the wing than the HD material does. I have to look so I didn't destroy it. Here we go. Take those, tie them in wide, 1 or 2 turns, double, and tie in. Get a little blue. The blue will mix together with the blue part of the wing. And have to be careful not taking too much of each. This is going to be 4 different bunches of hair untangled by brushing. A really smooth way of making all the strands come one side. Look at the taper before you tie it in. And I think it's a bit too much. Take it away a little bit. About 1 centimeter wide before I put it on. And make sure now my blue is longer than my yellow. And tie it in same way. Try to move the thread so I put each bunch of material on top, not to the front like this. I want to have as much as possible of the fly to be tied on the medium, and not on down to the extra small one. Does it look okay? Have a few angel hairs. You can also do that afterwards. Then I go and take a little bit of red, our octopusy red mix of angel hair, and not too many, few strands. Hold them in again, but between half a centimeter and a centimeter before I tie them in, and double back. And keep an eye on those fibers. Maybe I have a few that's been sliding down, and it is like that when you work a thread that way. They will push the material that way. You have to keep an eye on the fly, also this side. Okay, good. Time for the third one. Go over to the red. And in the original fly, these were swan fibers that were mixed together. And I have changed it to very soft hair that will move completely different way in the water than the stiff swan feathers will do. Red, and do the same. Brush through, untangle, look at the taper, and tie in. You can now see how this is growing into be something that almost looks like a classic fly actually. Make sure I use also sides of the tubing to get a wide fly. Here we go. Does it look good? Have to control the tapering while you tie. Okay, so now I have one color of hair left, and that is the brown I'm going to put on top, and I have two hackles. Now I like to do it like this, so that I divide the brown into two, because I'm tying with the half turbo cone, meaning that I will tie in what it will be the main part of the brown now. Just have to look at this. It's a really nice color for being like a mallard colored hair. Brown mallard coming from mallard ducks. Super material, but it's again a material that will not swim the way that this will do. So I look at this and make sure that I get the brown to be longer here. Super important. This is just barely long enough. Hold it down, look at this wing. Does it look good? I think it looks pretty good. And I tie it in. Have to be careful here now, not overdressing this fly. I think it looks okay. Here we go. And I cut this off. Clean, and it's worthwhile cleaning between everything you tie in. It's much easier to tie a good fly that way. Big difference compared to the classic wing. I usually say that the classic fly is tied for the fly tire and not for the fish that will see the fly from this perspective, but maybe you can recognize the colorations here. Okay, so to get enough hackle here, I will take one black feather more and tie in a little bit more of the black cox hackle. Finding a good one here, to add a little bit of volume to the front of the fly. And I'm gonna tie in some, so I get it on a good length. I'm gonna tie in another front hackle in front of this, but I want to add a little bit black here now. And doing this, I treat this the same way I do with most feathers. I just create a little triangle and double. What I can do now is that I can put a little bit of glue on here, and this way I will change this from the weakest part of the fly to be the strongest part of the fly, just securing all these hair bunches before I keep on going with my hackle. I will double this hold back on the part I'm tying in, and putting on 2 nice even turns. This way I add a little bit of extra black there, and I'm still doing everything on top of the medium. Now I will have to be careful, but I will tie in the last hackle before I tie in the last wing and pimp the fly with sides and cheeks and even horns on this one. That's my plan anyway. So I will now take a guinea fowl, and I picked a couple of feathers here that I thought were long enough. I want them to be fairly long, and with the guinea fowl what I do is that I strip one side. You can double them like you do with the other hackles, but I think it's easier and actually makes a nicer fly to strip down one side before you do the same, create the triangle and tie it in. Okay, now I'm gonna tie this in on the medium, moving the feather down to the extra small. So I do this, and since I have it like this, I don't need to double. I just need to hold back the black part of the hackling like this, and I try to twist it a little bit so I get a nice shape to this front hackle like that, and I tie it in, and again I tie in underneath. Few turns, and then I can pull this. This is a very durable feather. I can pull a little bit to tighten up, and I think I will have a good little hackle like that. Okay, so almost done here now. Okay, so now I'm gonna take a little bit of hair here and tie in. Hopefully I have long enough hair here, I'm not sure. If I don't, I'll have to walk over and find myself a piece that's a little bit longer. It's not important that this is very much longer than what I have that's already tapered, but it needs to be at least as long. Better if it's a little bit longer. And this, since I've already tied in the main part of the wing, this is going to be quite few strands. It's just to divide that hackle and turn this into a classic style fly. And you see how this tapers nicely, and it's long enough for me, and looks good. Being a fat Jock Scott here, but that's better than a slim one, I think. And then I take this and I pull up a little bit on the brown here to tighten this, because all this is going to be disappearing into my medium, into my half turbo cone. So I'll have to be a little careful when not leaving too much there. Okay, so putting on jungle cork, and I'm gonna take quite big feathers that will stretch back over this wing. It's good to pick feathers that have about equal length, equal size, of course. Here we go, starting with the one on my side, and this is totally straight. I want this to form, so I form it on my thumbnail, pulling it over the thumbnail, mechanically forming this, shaping it just the way I want it. And I tie it in, and it can reach all the way down to where my tubing ends, so the full body. And pull up, be careful now with thread. It's always an adventure to tie a fly like this with so much material that needs to go into that little space I have on my half turbo. So I form this, and I look from the top and see that these are the same length. Normally I move my vise, but I'm not doing that for you here now, because if I do, you will lose focus. I have to correct this one on my side here a little bit. Looks good. And I cut away, and now I'm gonna take actually to put on cheeks on these ones too, and on the original fly the cheeks are made of blue chatterer. I have a couple of old kingfisher skins, and I might as well use my kingfisher for this. You can also use a blue, teal and blue hackle, tip of a hackle, and hen hackles are better than cock's hackles here. And I tie this in with just 1 or 2 turns, trying to make this to be covering the jungle cock a little bit. It looks pretty good that way. And I take the other one and I put that in on my side here. And since I picked even feathers, it doesn't really matter if I go with your side or mine to start with. Okay, so looking nice. That's a little too high, I would say. To pull it down would be good. Leave it like that. Okay, and now I'm going to take a peacock, and first I'm going to take a couple of peacock curls and tie them in as a little roof over the wing. And I took a yellow one just because there should be golden pheasant feather over here, but now when I do this, I do it for roofing the fly, and I might as well use the yellow then. See, it's a little twisted, but I'll take this and I try to form them be as long as the longest part of the wing, and I tie them in at the same time. Every now and then I'll have to take one off, put it back on. Like this guy here is a little too far down, but since I just say 3 to 5, if I have one, just pull it out. I don't need it. looking good, I think. So cut this off, and now I'm only gonna do one little thing here. And now I will put on horns. Horns on a classic fly was blue macaw. And what I'm doing here, I'm taking actually again peacock, and perhaps I should have one that was dyed dark blue instead of this light blue color. But what I do is I put them on like horns like this, like the classic fly, and I try to have these go right outside the jungle cock. And they will form nicely like that. It's a bit lucky. It can be tricky to do them one by one. Does it matter if they twist a little bit? I would say it doesn't, because they are so thin that they will just mix together with all the other material. Okay, so a lot of time bragging about my organizers, and I think these are superb. Keep good order on all the cones, and I'm gonna put on a black. If I'd make it easy for myself, I would have taken our biggest one, but I do an extra small. And it's now important that I haven't used too much thread, because there's so very little space there. And it's almost like the old days fly tying, when a small head was what showed how good the tire was. And I take a little glue and I put a little glue on here. And now I can see my glue is getting a bit old, so I don't have to be that careful. If I have a glue that's new and very liquid, I will not put the glue on to the actual material. I'll put it in front and move it with the thread. So now I take this and I just pull this down. And the best way to pull down the cone to make it come close is to do it when the fly is out of the vise. So I take this out, hold the wing and press it down. And if I've done it correctly, there should be no thread there. Looking at this, and having a few fibers pointing here and there, but I take this now and I'll cut this off 3 millimeters and melt it. Show it to you here a little bit, making that cone stick, putting a little fluorescence on in front of the black, like I do on most of my flies. I prefer to get a big contrast between the tubing and the cone. Okay, look at the fly. I always take the fly and I look from underneath and see if I have some of my angel hair normally that is too long or interfering. And I think it turned out okay. Could maybe have had one more turn of black hackle in front there. But for me, I'm normally used to have the black dubbing, meaning I get a much heavier front. but I think it turned out to be good. You like it? I liked it. I'll fish it. Okay, the Jock Scott. A pattern with more than 100 years on its neck, or soon 200 years actually. And it still catches fish. And I don't know if we should have criteria that say that if you haven't caught a salmon on a Jock Scott, you're not allowed to call yourself a proper salmon angler. Maybe that's too cocky. I don't know. You recognize them? Very different flies, but they are, I would say, both Jock Scotts, even if they are tied in very different way with different materials. Which one would you fish? Which one would swim the best, do you think? For me, it's quite obvious that this fly will outfish this fly a million times. So, nice. The Jock Scott. And a lot of talk, a lot of materials, different techniques. I love to take the classic patterns and just transform them into being what I think is good fishing flies. And I've caught fish on Jock Scotts and silver greys and green highlanders and silver doctors and black doctors, and there's a million good patterns to transform into a modern fly. Okay, I think this is a longer film than we normally do, but I hope you enjoyed this tying. And if I'm not completely wrong, the next one will be coming next year, and right on after New Year's, and we're gonna tie something completely different. It's gonna be a fly from our new series. This is also from our new series of flies that we call Classic Classics. I mean, in 100 years we call them classics. I don't know, it's a bit stupid maybe, but and we're gonna do a different fly with new materials in a completely different ways. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. I'm not sure you think it's worthwhile putting this much material and time into a fishing fly, but if you do, tie one, catch one on it, and call yourself a proper salmon fisher. Thank you.